Got interrupted. Wanted to finish my thoughts on being a caregiver, and I look up at how messed up my family was, and being a caregiver, I don't know how many 100 clients I took care of over the time I was with Homestead Senior Care, and man, my family's pretty tame compared to some of these families out there. I watched this lady kill her husband. They'd had a, they'd put him on morphine. I don't think he needed it, but that's just me. And 2 o'clock in the morning, I think he was trying to talk. I'd gone in to talk to him a couple times. He never got conscious, and he was my guy. I'll talk about my guy later. When you're a caregiver, your guy, they are your guy. You don't mess with your guy. He's gonna answer to me. And he's moaning or something, and she goes in there, and I'm standing on one side of the hospital bed, she's on the other, and she dropped 3 of those vials, the syringes of morphine. She just went voop, 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 all 3 of them. And he died like 2 hours later. I would do the graveyard shift. I loved it. I loved graveyard. And I sitting there by him when he took his last breath, and this woman killed her husband. And that morning I'd gotten off at I waited around till got home instead. People that owned it at the time. He had died. My shift had ended at 6 o'clock. They're going, just clock out and go home, and I'm going, no, I'm not going to leave this lady here with a dead body waiting for the funeral home to come pick him up. And there's just no way. I've done that twice now with 2 different clients. And so I stuck around, and probably 7:30. Charlie was the caretaker over at the bridge. Man, he was out there picking up trash, and I hooked up with him. We were walking across the railroad bridge, and he's going out hitting the garbage cans he hits every day, and doing his thing and smoking cigarettes. And I told him my story, man. It was like, I'd run into Charlie before that, but we'd never really sat down or looked eye to eye and talked. And I got to tell him about this lady. And what was weird about that, I don't know how this. Well, this is just kind of also a cleanup for my Uncle Dick. She did that, and we got through the rest of the night. Maybe it was a little later than 4 o'clock that he died. Maybe it was because I wasn't there very long to knowing that he's died, and then waiting for them to come pick him up. And I'm driving away, and it's probably a 10-minute drive, 12-minute drive from where I was to the Railroad Bridge Park, and that's when it hit me that she killed him. And I'm going, that evil woman, that's a whole nother story. She, this woman, this poor lady, 1983, he worked for the railroad back in Illinois, and 1983, she had gotten up to get out of bed and fell over, and from that moment on, she was paralyzed from the waist down. And he just said, oh, I'm going to work, you just take care of this. And man, I mean, he just left her. Oh God, what a husband. They were Catholic, so they couldn't get divorced. And he had a 17-foot Grumman canoe, man. It was the exact same canoe I grew up with. It was funny because he was this little hunched over guy with this, the back of his neck higher than his head, and just they could barely get around. And before he got real bad, it was like one of the times I'm going, man, let's go look at your canoe, man. And so we march out there and look at his canoe, turned over and get the water out of it, and just going, man, this is And I'd gone up on to the Quetico, which is north of Minnesota, up in Canada, in a float plane with my dad. Did that trip a couple times. And this guy grew up, in that part. He grew up, I think, north of Illinois. So he was very familiar with the Boundary Waters, which is the U.S. part of that park, and the Quetico is the Canadian part. And so you go in there, and they take you out in a float plane. You go through, they fly you to customs, and then they fly you to where they're going to drop you off. And this guy, he had been up there. He had been on the lakes. He'd fished the lakes that I'd fished. I went and got my maps, and we're looking at this, and he's like getting all excited. And about half a mile from his his where they lived, there was this pond. I mean, it was not. It was just like water, maybe 50 yards across, maybe a little bit bigger than that, but not very big. And I'm just going, I always thought with Tom Dugan, if I could, just get the permission to load the canoe on my truck, uh, take him up there, put a life vest on him. I knew. I mean, this guy could hardly walk, and I knew this guy would help me carry the canoe if I had done that. He had pictures of, he had a cloth canoe that had all these patches on it. He loved canoeing, and oh man, that she was such an evil woman. Okay, but if I had gotten permission, I could have taken him up there, and we would have gone canoeing. He would have been in heaven. I could have made his life. I wish I could have had been able to do that, and give him that one last time on the water in the canoe. I knew he would have sitting back, and the one in the back, it sucks being in front because all you're doing is paddling. The one in the back is doing all the steering and everything, man. I hate being in the front of the canoe. I'm being in the back, but I knew he'd be in the back of the canoe, just doing it. I knew in my heart, he would have gotten into that, so. They were talking about, they're going to sell the canoe. That's one of the neighbors. They made an offer or whatever, and something, and just was taking time. And I'm going, I'll buy it. And they're going, no, we can't do that. The only thing I've ever stolen from a client was from Tom Dugan, and it was, when you have a canoe, all you need is 1/4-inch line. You don't need rope. You just need 1/4-inch line, and you put a clip on the end so you can clip it to the canoe, and then, that's all you need. And he had like about a 30-foot piece of, 1/4-inch nylon with the clip on the end, and I took that, and he had a sharpening stone, and had Tom Dugan written on it, and I took that. That's the only thing. I mean, he had this garage just full of all this crap, man, and. That's in my caregiving, and the I don't know, 3.5, 4 years that I was a caregiver. That's the only thing I ever stole from a client was that. So anyway, it's a couple weeks later go by. She ends up selling his canoe. Walks up to him. He's sitting in his chair that he sits in all day. Waves this check for like $250. I mean, that canoe is priceless to him. And just, I sold your canoe, and laughing at him and shit. And I swear it was from that moment on, he just said, no more, I'm done. She killed him. And I had never seen anybody more ready to just, they'd run their race, man. He's an interesting guy. He worked on the lights and stuff on the railroad tracks. He was a lineman, I guess, or whatever. And at one time he was in the union the oldest working member. And he talked about. I thought it was interesting because he had this plaque, memorializing something with the railroad or something playing on the wall, and the. I'll think of the railroad line in a minute because it's the Arlo Guthrie song. It ran north and south, from Chicago to Louisiana. And, I go, that's interesting because back then, you would think everybody's running east to west, and these guys were going, no, we're going north to south. And he looked at me and he goes, John, we moved a lot of cotton. And yeah, I'll bet, man. I'll bet. And when I get to Madeline, I gave, hospice gave me a little vial of morphine, and I gave some to Madeline. I didn't, empty the thing, and she's like this. And it was, she never, when I couldn't get on her back, it just, I don't know, she was on her side. Actually, I liked it because she smoked and all that shit in her lungs. I had my favorite beach towel of all time, and it just, all that crap in her lungs came out on it. It was horrible. I don't know how she was breathing through that at the end. But I kind of go up to her, and her face is aside, and I drip it into her mouth, and I'm, maybe just through your mucous membrane you get enough, and I swore, I would never give anybody morphine like that, do anything, give them morphine. And it, one of those lessons in life, or one of those things that prepared me for later, was when she killed her husband. It made it okay, I forgive her. You know, I've forgiven her in my heart. You know, it made it so that I could give Madeline morphine at that time. You know, Madeline probably, you know, it probably helped her along a little bit. You know, I know that I've, you know, my heart attacks, I've gotten morphine, and you know, it helps you breathe better. So I mean, I could have been just prolonging. You know, I'm sitting at the top of her head. You know, she's on the floor of the living room, and she's not conscious. She said her last words to me, and all I'm saying is, you know, Madeline, if you can hear me, you know, I'm right here. You know, I hope you know that. You know, that was horrible watching that stuff come out of her mouth. I like, you know, that's what happens when you smoke. You know, it's like, anyway, I got off on that tangent. I'll probably post this video a little later because, you know, that's Madeline is a story in and of herself. I'll tell this one story. When we first got together back in August of 2018, it's interesting because I ran into her that one day, and we were together every day until the day she died. I'll tell it later.